Last week, we looked at every manufacturer's roughest coaster. That was kinda negative, so let's balance it out. For every coaster that makes your brain bleed, there are coasters out there that run like a hot knife through butter. Some new, some old, and it just makes you wonder, why can't every ride be like this? Today, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. This is every manufacturer's smoothest coaster. Just a note, I can only judge how rough or smooth a ride is based on my personal experience, so this will just be coasters that I've ridden. If you've ridden something that you think belongs here, let me know in the comments. Also, for this list, there isn't a good choice for every manufacturer, or I have no personal experience with them, so I gotta leave some of them out. Sorry to Jinma, Pax, Pinfari, SBF Visa, and Vegan. You gotta sit this one out. Let's start with Aerodynamics, a manufacturer not typically associated with a smooth ride. Most, if not all of the projects were designed by hand. They go back to the 1950s, and their newest one is still over 20 years old. That being said, there are two loopers that I would consider smooth. One is Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I've ridden this a few times over the last 15 years, and it's always been a nice smooth ride. Over this offseason, they're bringing in Premier Rides to do some work on it, so now it should run even better. This ride goes back to 1978, but the winner for Aero is Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. This is Aero's newest looper, opening in 1999, and although it's a short ride, it's a powerful one, and it glides over that track. B&M has always been associated with well-engineered, smooth rides, but over the years, that hasn't always remained the case. You're hard-pressed to find a true rough B&M, but a lot of them seem to vibrate on the track as the years pass by. There are a couple new B&Ms that I just rode that are still running glossy smooth. One is Monster at Groenland. This 2021 invert is what I would describe as graceful, and you can ride it all day. For B&M, I'm going with Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland. Opening in 2019, this massive dive coaster doesn't even seem like it's touching the rails. Not a hint of that infamous B&M rattle. Custom Coasters International, or CCI, is a tough one for this category. Their coasters all range between 21 and 31 years old, and they're all made of wood. I'm left trying to find a smooth wooden coaster that's also aging. One CCI that's very smooth right now is Ghost Rider at Knott's. That's mainly thanks to a retrack done by GCI in 2016. They did a masterful job, and Knott's has maintained that job after all these years. For a pure CCI, I'm going with Great White at Morey's Piers. For a seaside wooden coaster, especially one that's from 1996 and one that big, I was afraid this might be rough. To my surprise, it's one of the smoother wooden coasters that I've ridden. I wish I didn't get stapled, but that's another story. This ran amazing. Chance Rides doesn't have a lot to choose from. The recent stuff from Chance has been very good, so let's go to Kentucky Kingdom and ride Lightning Run. This Hyper GTX is loaded with sharp airtime hills, tight turns, and not even a hint of a pothole or a vibration. The track sways a little bit, as you can see here, but this thing is smooth as glass. The Dinn Corporation is just like CCI, but worse. Their coasters only span from 1988 to 1991, but they were busy. They opened 10 during those years. 6 of them have closed. 3 of them have become RMCs, but of the ones still open, I think 2 of them are pretty smooth. One is Predator at Six Flags Darien Lake. Well, it's not that smooth, but given where it came from, it's shockingly smooth. I call this the worst wooden coaster I've ever ridden, and that was mainly due to its ungodly roughness. Now that it's been transformed with sections of GCI's Titan track, it's rideable, even if it's not perfectly smooth. For Dinn, I'm going with Thunder Run at Kentucky Kingdom. The last time I rode this in 2020, I was very impressed. Not only was it very smooth, the first half was a lot of fun. Didn't forget to make the second half any fun, but at least it was smooth. If you're gonna be bored, at least you don't have to be in pain also. Great Coasters International, or GCI, is an actual active wooden coaster company. Their coasters go back to 1996, still churning them out, and there are 2 that really stand out. One is Lightning Racer at Hershey Park. I make fun of this coaster for being boring, but one thing I will never say about it is that it's rough. Even after 20 plus years, it's still running great. My pick for GCI is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. This may be less impressive, only dating back to 2017, but from start to finish, it darts back and forth, giving an out-of-control feeling and mixing in airtime, and I don't think it could possibly be more smooth. It's one of the most re-rideable wooden coasters I've ever been on. Gerstlauer can be really hit or miss. I have been stunned by the roughness of some of these coasters, especially the new ones, but not every Gerstlauer has this problem. There's one that opened at Tusenfryd this year called Storm the Dragon Legend, and that thing just runs perfect. Same with another Scandinavian Gerstlauer, Thor's Hammer at Gerstsummerland. This wasn't just built this year. It dates back to 2002. This bobsled coaster is like a wild mouse on steroids, and it runs awesome. These are just my runners-up. My pick for Gerstlauer is Hydrus at Casino Pier. Not all Eurofighters are this smooth. They're kind of hit or miss. Opening in 2017 on the Jersey Shore, Hydrus isn't only the smoothest Gerstlauer, it's in the top tier of smoothest coasters I've ever been on, period. Giovanola has 3 coasters, and I think they nailed it with that whole smoothness thing. They need to work on their airtime, but between Goliath at Magic Mountain and Titan at Over Texas, I can't choose which one is smoother. They both win. The Gravity Group is another active wooden coaster manufacturer, but they have a reputation for running kinda rough. I can't think of any large-scale Gravity Group that runs great. Maybe Leviathan at SeaWorld Australia, but I can't vouch for that one yet. I'm looking towards their smaller ones. Switchback at ZDT's is great, so is Wooden Warrior at Quasi, but the newest one I've ridden is the one I'm choosing, Kentucky Flyer at Kentucky Kingdom. This opened in 2019, I rode it in 2020, and it was running in prime condition. I don't know if it's still like that 3 years later, but I can only speak from experience. Hopkins doesn't have the best reputation, but of the 3 coasters I've ridden, I think they're all pretty smooth. Texas Tornado at Wonderland, and both coasters at Castles and Coasters. Desert Storm and Patriot. None of them are like Hydrus, but they aren't rattly or rough either. I think they all share in this great honor. Intamin has so many different types of coasters. Some run smooth, and some definitely do not. For a smooth one, look at the 2021 double launch masterpiece, Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. That would have been my answer until this past summer, when I went to Gothenburg, Sweden and rode Balder at Leesburg. Of all the steel coasters that Intamin is responsible for, it's this prefabricated wooden coaster that wins out. How a wooden coaster can be this smooth? Well, that's just good laser-cut engineering and great maintenance. Mack Rides makes coasters of all sizes, but no matter what, they're all very smooth. For this, I'm ignoring their Wild Mouse coasters, and just looking at their launch coasters. Manta at SeaWorld San Diego is great. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds, same thing. But I think the smoothest of the smooth belongs to Slinky Dog Dash at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Gotta love that Disney maintenance. Plus, the ride's not very fast, and that helps. But everything about this ride is mesmerizingly smooth and graceful. Maurer has a bunch of spinning coasters out there. Most of them run very well, some better than others. But I think one stands out here. That's Laugh Track at Hershey Park. Being indoors and not exposed to the elements, I think that makes it easier to maintain. Next time you ride this, just try and appreciate how smooth this is riding around in the dark. Morgan didn't make many coasters, but the ones they did were mostly huge and very, very smooth. My pick is not even a coaster they designed themselves. It's Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. This was built by Arrow, but after 10 years, it was so rough it had to close and be redesigned. Morgan took this on, and somehow, it went from a horribly rough coaster to one of the smoothest coasters I've ever ridden. It's so fast, it needs to be smooth. The last thing you want is to be jackhammered at 85 miles an hour, and over 20 years later, it's still great. Premier Rides is known for 2 things, launch coasters and smooth coasters. It's so hard to pick. There's Tigress at Busch Gardens Tampa, there's Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando, but for this one, let's pick something on the older side. Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The way this winds up and around and through a mountain, under and over a gigantic loop, doing all of it without a hint of a rattle, that deserves some praise. Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters, or PTC, is the oldest wooden coaster manufacturer. Their earlier projects go back to 1904, and their last coaster opened almost 50 years ago. Still, you can find some very smooth coasters thanks to some amazing maintenance crews. Comet at Hershey Park opened in 1946, and it's still a smooth ride for the whole family. But my pick is not only a coaster from the 40s, it's also been relocated. This is Phoenix at Knoebels. Originally opening at San Antonio's Playland Park in 1947, it was moved to Knoebels in 1985. Almost 40 years after making the move, it couldn't possibly be more smooth, still giving that classic PTC airtime. Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC, is new on the scene. Their oldest coaster is only 12, and for the most part, these coasters are smooth as glass. Really, just take your pick from any of the iBox coasters. When I think of smooth RMCs, the first one that comes to mind is Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England, so let's go with that one. Still, you can't go wrong with any of them. Steel Vengeance, Airy Force 1, Twisted Timbers, there's no wrong answers here. The Roller Coaster Corporation of America, or RCCA, made a few wooden coasters in their day. I only rode Son of Beast. It was horrendous. Moving on. S&S specializes in launch coasters, but they also have a lot of other weird coasters. Some wooden coasters, so there's a lot to choose from. For my money, the smoothest S&S coaster is Max Force at Six Flags Great America. After ripping your face off with that insane launch, it glides through its 5 inversions, and that makes the ride super re-rideable. That is, if you can stomach the launch. Schwarzkopf was big in the 70s and 80s, but that's where their reign ended. These coasters have stood the test of time, and for the most part, they're running like new. Most of them are great, other than a tiny rattle, but there's one that I rode that was perfect through and through. Wildcat at the Washington State Fair. Those big drops, that final helix. I remember thinking how fun this ride was and how insanely smooth it was the one time I got to ride it, and it stuck with me 4 years later. Skyline hasn't done much on their own, but this year they're opening 2 new family coasters, both called Kid Flash. These will probably be the smoothest. From what I've ridden, its title twister at SeaWorld San Diego, may it rest in pieces. Not a good coaster, if you want to call it that, but at least it ran okay on its track. Togo is notorious for some bad coasters, and of the ones I've ridden, the smoothest is Big Apple Coaster in Vegas. Now that it has new trains, those bad transitions don't hurt like they used to. Plus, this doesn't really have a rattle. It's a low bar, but after it got that train upgrade, this has become a halfway decent ride. And by that, I mean it's rideable. The layout is still bad. Vekoma has scarred us over the years with some very bad coasters, but their new stuff is making up for it. I've had the pleasure of riding Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot, or Conan at Farouk Summerland, and its clone, Dragonflyer at Dollywood. But my choice is another family suspended coaster, Phoenix at Dino's Wonder Wheel on Coney Island. Kind of like Hydrus, when I first rode this, I was just blown away by how smooth it was. Fun, forceful, just perfectly smooth in its opening year when I rode it in 2021. It's a must ride if you're in New York City. Zamperla coasters are usually tolerable, albeit not smooth, but one stands out above the rest, Moto Coaster at Six Flags Darien Lake. I found this experience downright pleasant, pretty forceful early on with that first launch and twist all the way to the top. It gets boring towards the end as it winds its way down, but it's butter smooth the whole way through. Zierer mainly builds small coasters, but it's known to go big once in a while. Going down my list, one stands out, and if you've ridden it, I think you'd agree. This is Runaway Tram at Maurer's Piers. This is a really fun, large family coaster on the boardwalk. It pulls some good forces as it winds around itself, and it's so crazy smooth from the first drop all the way to the final magnetic brakes. Last one. For this series, I'm adding E&F Miler. I normally leave them out, but I thought they might want to play this time. I didn't have a lot of great options for a smooth E&F Miler, but when I went to Prairie Playland and rode Prairie Screamer, I thought it was running great. I rode this at Scandia, Ontario in 2019, and I thought it wasn't near as good as it was in 2023. If you're in the Dallas area, you gotta stop by and check this one out. That's a wrap on every manufacturer's smoothest coaster. If you have any disagreements based on your own experience, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out my video on every manufacturer's roughest coaster. That's in the links down below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. And if you're new here and want to see more content like this, please give me a sub. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server. That has a news section for a nightly news roundup in the theme park world. And my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. And my baseball channel if you also happen to love baseball like I do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.